My mother destroyed our family with her affair 6 weeks before my sister's wedding. Then my sister thanked her affair partner in her speech while my heartbroken father sat watching from the back. I never imagined my family would implode so spectacularly, or that my sister would choose sides in such a cruel and public way. My name is Nathan, I'm 26 years old, and this is the story of how my mother's affair tore apart everything I thought was solid, and how my sister's actions at her own wedding showed me exactly who she really was. My parents had been married for 30 years. My father Richard worked as an accountant at a mid-sized firm, providing a stable if unspectacular income for our family. My mother Diana had worked as an executive assistant for the past 15 years at a successful real estate development company. She worked for a man named Gregory Haynes, who owned the company and had a reputation for being charming, wealthy, and twice divorced. Growing up, I had what I thought was a normal, happy family. My sister Melissa is 2 years older than me, and we had the typical sibling relationship of rivalry mixed with genuine affection. Our parents seemed happy enough, attending our school events together, taking family vacations, celebrating holidays with extended family. There were no obvious signs of trouble, at least none that I noticed. Melissa got engaged to her boyfriend Troy about 18 months ago. Troy comes from a wealthy family, and from the moment of the engagement, the wedding planning became an all-consuming project for both Melissa and our mother. They spent weekends touring venues, tasting cakes, shopping for dresses, and obsessing over every detail. The wedding was planned to be an elaborate affair at an expensive hotel, with over 200 guests. My father funded a significant portion of the wedding, despite some tension about the cost. Melissa wanted everything to be perfect and expensive, and our mother encouraged this vision. Dad would occasionally push back on particularly extravagant expenses, which would lead to arguments between him and Mom about being supportive of their daughter's special day. About 2 months before the wedding, I started noticing changes in my mother's behavior. She was constantly on her phone, texting and smiling in a way that seemed secretive. She started dressing differently, wearing more expensive clothes and more makeup than usual. She began going to the gym regularly, something she had never done consistently before. She also started working later hours and going on more business trips with Gregory. When I mentioned these observations to my father during a weekend visit, he admitted he had noticed the same things. He looked tired and worried when he said it. He told me he had tried to talk to Mom about spending more time together, suggesting date nights and a weekend getaway, but she always had excuses about being too busy with work or wedding planning. The revelation came 6 weeks before Melissa's wedding. I got a call from my father at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night. His voice was shaking, and I could tell he had been crying. He told me to come to the house immediately, that something had happened with Mom. I drove over to my childhood home, my mind racing with possibilities. When I arrived, Dad was sitting at the kitchen table with a laptop open in front of him. Mom wasn't there. He showed me what he had found, months of text messages between Mom and Gregory that he had discovered on her iPad, which was synced to her phone. The messages were explicit and left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. They had been having an affair for at least 8 months. The texts showed them planning secret meetups, exchanging romantic messages, and discussing a future together. In one particularly devastating text, Mom had told Gregory that she had wasted 30 years of her life in a boring marriage and that he made her feel alive again. Dad had confronted Mom earlier that evening. According to him, she had initially tried to deny it, then minimized it, and finally admitted to the affair. She had told him she was in love with Gregory and wanted a divorce. She had packed a bag and left, saying she needed space to think. Dad later found out she had gone to Gregory's house. I was shocked and furious. I immediately called Melissa to tell her what had happened. Her reaction surprised and disappointed me. She was upset, yes, but her first concern was how this would affect her wedding. She asked if Dad and Mom could just pretend to get along for 6 more weeks until after the ceremony. When I told her that was absurd given the circumstances, she got defensive and said I didn't understand how much stress she was under with the wedding planning. Over the next few days, the situation deteriorated rapidly. Mom refused to come home or have any meaningful conversation about the marriage. She communicated primarily through text, saying she needed time and space. Dad was devastated, barely eating or sleeping, going through the motions at work while his personal life collapsed. Melissa's reaction continued to trouble me. When she finally met with Dad to discuss the situation, she spent most of the conversation focused on whether the affair would impact the wedding plans. She seemed more concerned about Mom's emotional state and ability to help with final preparations than about Dad's heartbreak. She actually suggested that maybe Dad had driven Mom to cheat by being too boring and not appreciating her enough. I confronted Melissa about her lack of empathy for our father. She told me I was being dramatic and that marriages were complicated. She said Mom deserved to be happy, and if she had found love with Gregory, who were we to judge? I pointed out that Mom had betrayed Dad's trust, violated her marriage vows, and blown up our family, but Melissa dismissed these concerns as old-fashioned thinking. The real shock came when Melissa announced that she had met with Gregory at his office. Mom had apparently set up the meeting so Melissa could get to know him better. Melissa came back from that meeting raving about how sophisticated and successful Gregory was, how he had offered to help with wedding expenses since the situation with Dad and Mom was stressful. She seemed dazzled by his wealth and charm. I asked Melissa if she understood that Gregory was the man who had helped destroy our parents' marriage. She said the marriage was clearly broken already, and Gregory was just helping Mom be brave enough to leave. The cognitive dissonance was stunning. My sister had somehow convinced herself that our mother's affair partner was actually a positive force in her life. Dad tried his best to maintain some normalcy, but the pain was visible on his face constantly. Mom filed for divorce 3 weeks before the wedding. She didn't ask for a modest settlement, she went after half of everything, including demanding Dad buy out her share of the house immediately or force its sale. Her attorney was aggressive and uncompromising. The worst part was watching Dad try to navigate his role in Melissa's wedding. He had already paid for a significant portion of the costs, but Melissa was now accepting money from Gregory as well. When Dad asked Melissa if Gregory would be attending the wedding, she hesitated before saying that Mom wanted him there as her +1. Dad looked like he had been punched. I told Melissa this was unacceptable. This was Dad's money funding much of her wedding, and she was going to let Mom parade her affair partner in front of him and all of our extended family? Melissa said it wasn't fair to ask Mom to come alone when she was in a relationship. I pointed out that the relationship was based on adultery and had destroyed our family, but Melissa accused me of being judgmental and unsupportive of her wedding. 2 weeks before the wedding, Melissa uninvited me from being a groomsman. She said my negative attitude was creating stress and drama, and she needed to surround herself with positive people. The irony of accusing me of creating drama while planning to have our mother's affair partner at her wedding was apparently lost on her. Troy, her fiancé, apologized privately but said he had to support whatever Melissa wanted. I attended the rehearsal dinner because Dad asked me to. He didn't want to face the event alone, and I couldn't abandon him. The dinner was held at an upscale restaurant, with about 50 guests including the wedding party and close family. Mom arrived with Gregory. She had the audacity to introduce him to extended family members as her partner, with no acknowledgement of the devastation their relationship had caused. Gregory played the role of charming gentleman, complimenting people and making small talk. Several family members who didn't know the full story seemed impressed by him. Those who knew the truth gave Mom cold stares that she either didn't notice or chose to ignore. Dad sat at a table toward the side of the room. Melissa had arranged the seating so that Mom and Gregory were at a central table with some of her friends, while Dad was positioned almost like a regular guest rather than the father of the bride. I sat with Dad, along with my girlfriend Emma and a couple of my cousins who were equally disgusted by the situation. The rehearsal dinner proceeded with the typical schedule of toasts and speeches. Troy's parents spoke about how happy they were to welcome Melissa into their family. Troy gave a sweet speech about how much he loved Melissa. Then it was Melissa's turn to speak. She started by thanking everyone for coming and for supporting her and Troy. She thanked Troy's parents for their generosity and kindness. Then she turned her attention to thanking her parents. I watched Dad straighten up slightly in his chair, perhaps hoping for some acknowledgement of his love and support over the years, of the money he had contributed to make her dream wedding possible. Instead, Melissa looked directly at Gregory and our mother. She thanked Mom for being her rock throughout the wedding planning process and for always being there for her. Then she said something that made the entire room go silent. She thanked Gregory for stepping up to be a father figure when she needed one, for his generosity in helping make her dream wedding come true, and for showing her what it means to have a parent who truly cares. The implication was crystal clear. She was publicly positioning Gregory as her real parent while Dad sat 15 feet away. I looked at my father and saw tears streaming down his face. He wasn't making a sound, just sitting there crying quietly while his daughter praised the man who had helped destroy his marriage. Several of our relatives looked shocked and uncomfortable. My Aunt Carol stood up and walked out. My Uncle James shook his head in disbelief. But Melissa continued her speech, completely oblivious to or uncaring about the pain she was causing. She finished by saying she was grateful to have such wonderful parental figures in her life who supported her happiness. I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up and left the restaurant, with Emma following close behind. Dad joined us a few minutes later. He was shaking, his face pale. He said he wanted to leave, that he couldn't stay and watch this anymore. I drove him home while Emma followed in her car. At his house, Dad broke down completely. He said he had given Melissa everything, had worked extra hours to pay for her college education without loans, had supported her dreams even when they were expensive, and this was how she repaid him. He said he felt invisible, like his 30 years of marriage and 28 years of fatherhood meant nothing. I stayed with Dad that night, worried about leaving him alone in such emotional pain. The next morning, Melissa called me screaming. She said I had ruined her rehearsal dinner by making a scene and leaving. She said my dramatic exit had upset several guests and made her look bad. I told her she had made herself look bad by publicly humiliating our father, but she insisted I was being oversensitive and that her speech had been perfectly appropriate. The wedding was the next day. Dad told me he wasn't going to attend. He couldn't sit through a ceremony where he would be treated as an afterthought while Gregory was celebrated. I supported his decision completely and told him I wouldn't be attending either. Melissa sent a series of furious texts saying we were selfish and that she would never forgive us for missing her wedding. I didn't respond to her texts. Instead, I spent the day with Dad, just being present and trying to support him through one of the worst periods of his life. We watched sports, ordered takeout, and avoided talking about the wedding that was happening without us. Update 1. It's been 3 months since Melissa's wedding, and the fallout has been more extensive than I anticipated. The family has essentially split into factions, relationships have been permanently altered, and the truth about what really happened has continued to emerge in ways that have vindicated my father and revealed just how calculated my mother's actions were. The day after the wedding, I received dozens of messages from relatives who had attended. Many were appalled by what they had witnessed. My Aunt Carol, who had walked out of the rehearsal dinner, told me the actual wedding ceremony had been even worse. Melissa had arranged for Gregory to walk her partway down the aisle alongside our mother, positioning him as an equal parental figure. Dad's absence was explained by Melissa and her ceremony program as him being unable to attend due to personal issues. Several of my cousins reached out to express their disgust at how Melissa had treated Dad. They said the wedding had an uncomfortable atmosphere, with guests whispering about the affair and the family drama. Troy's parents had apparently been unaware of the full situation and were shocked to learn at their son's wedding that the distinguished gentleman they had been introduced to was actually our mother's affair partner who had helped destroy her marriage. My mother tried to reach out to me several times in the weeks following the wedding. Her messages alternated between anger at me for not attending Melissa's wedding and attempts to explain her perspective. In one particularly infuriating text, she said I would understand when I was older that sometimes people fall out of love and that she deserved to be happy after years of feeling unfulfilled. I finally responded to tell her that having an affair instead of addressing her marriage problems honestly was selfish and cowardly. I said that publicly humiliating Dad while he was paying for much of her daughter's wedding was cruel. I told her that I wanted no relationship with her until she took real accountability for her actions. She responded by saying I was being manipulated by my father and that she had tried to make her marriage work for years. This claim about trying to make the marriage work was contradicted by information that came to light about a month after the wedding. My uncle James, who has connections in the business community, did some investigating into Gregory's background. He discovered that Gregory and my mother had actually been involved romantically for at least 2 years, not the 8 months the text messages suggested. There were hotel receipts, travel records, and testimony from former employees at Gregory's company who had witnessed their relationship developing over time. When confronted with this evidence, Mom admitted the affair had been going on longer than she had initially acknowledged. She claimed she had only lied to protect everyone's feelings, which made no sense given that the truth would have come out eventually. Dad was devastated all over again, realizing that even more of his marriage had been a lie than he had thought. The divorce proceedings became increasingly ugly. Mom's attorney continued to push for maximum financial gain, including demanding spousal support despite her own substantial income and her relationship with wealthy Gregory. Dad's attorney argued that her adultery should impact the settlement, and the legal battle dragged on for months. During this time, I learned more about Gregory's character that made Mom's choice even more questionable. His 2 previous divorces had both involved infidelity on his part. His second ex-wife reached out to Dad through a mutual connection, wanting to warn him about Gregory's patterns. She explained that Gregory had a history of pursuing married women who worked for him, romancing them with his wealth and charm, and then eventually growing bored and moving on to someone new. She had proof that Gregory was still maintaining contact with several women besides my mother, including suggestive texts and lunch meetings that seemed inappropriate for someone in a committed relationship. I shared this information with Dad, who gave it to his attorney. When this information was presented during divorce proceedings, Mom became defensive and accused Dad of trying to sabotage her happiness. My relationship with Melissa continued to deteriorate. She reached out a few times to complain that I had ruined her wedding by not attending. I told her that she had ruined her own wedding by choosing to publicly humiliate our father while accepting his money. She said I was being dramatic and that she had every right to celebrate her wedding with whomever she wanted present. I asked Melissa how she could justify accepting thousands of dollars from Dad for her wedding while simultaneously praising Gregory as her real father figure. She said that Dad's money was just him fulfilling his obligation as a parent, while Gregory's generosity came from genuine care. The entitlement and lack of self-awareness in that statement was astounding. The real breaking point in my relationship with Melissa came about 2 months after her wedding. She called to tell me she was pregnant and wanted to repair our relationship before the baby was born. I congratulated her on the pregnancy but told her that repairing our relationship would require her to acknowledge how badly she had treated Dad. Melissa refused. She maintained that she had done nothing wrong and that I was the one who needed to apologize for missing her wedding and creating family drama. I told her that I wouldn't be a part of her life or her child's life unless she showed some basic decency and empathy toward our father. She called me heartless and hung up. Dad, meanwhile, has been slowly rebuilding his life. The divorce was finalized about 2 months ago. Mom got a significant settlement, though not as much as she had initially demanded. The judge was not sympathetic to her case given the circumstances of the affair and her substantial income. Dad kept the house and most of his retirement accounts. The most satisfying development came when Mom's relationship with Gregory began to show cracks. About 6 weeks ago, I heard through family connections that Gregory had been seen having dinner with a younger woman who worked at his company. When Mom confronted him about it, he apparently dismissed her concerns and said she was being paranoid and controlling. The irony of Mom experiencing the insecurity and suspicion that come with being in a relationship with someone who has a history of infidelity was not lost on anyone. My Aunt Carol told me that Mom had called her crying, saying she couldn't believe Gregory would disrespect her this way. My aunt had apparently told Mom that this is what happens when you build a relationship on betrayal and lies. Last month, I learned that Gregory had ended his relationship with Mom. According to sources close to the situation, he had told her that things had run their course and that he was ready to move on. Mom was devastated, having left her marriage and alienated much of her family for a man who discarded her as soon as someone newer came along. In a moment of desperation, Mom tried to reach out to Dad. She sent him a long email talking about how she had made mistakes and wondered if they could talk. Dad showed me the email, asking for my opinion. I told him that Mom had destroyed their marriage, taken his money in the divorce, and only seemed interested in reconnecting now that her affair partner had dumped her. He agreed and didn't respond to her message. Mom then tried to reconnect with me, presumably hoping I would facilitate some kind of reconciliation with Dad. She sent messages saying she realized she had made errors in judgment and that family should be there for each other. I responded that she was right about family being there for each other, which is why her betrayal of Dad and my defense of him were both completely justified. She didn't message again after that. Melissa's response to Mom's breakup with Gregory was telling. Rather than showing any remorse for how she had elevated Gregory at Dad's expense, she was angry at Gregory for hurting Mom. She posted on social media about the importance of loyalty and how disappointing it is when people you trust let you down. The lack of self-awareness was stunning. Several family members commented on Melissa's post, pointing out the irony of her suddenly caring about loyalty and trust after what she had put Dad through. She deleted the post and blocked several relatives, further isolating herself from the family members who had tried to maintain neutrality. Troy's family has been supportive of Dad, which has been a surprising bright spot. Troy's father reached out to invite Dad to lunch, apologizing for not understanding the full situation earlier. He said that if he had known the extent of what was happening, he would have insisted Melissa handle things differently. Troy himself has privately expressed discomfort with how Melissa treated Dad but seems unwilling to push back against his wife. Dad has started dating again, nothing serious, but he's putting himself out there and trying to rebuild his social life. He's also started therapy to work through the betrayal and the loss of his marriage. He seems stronger now than he did 6 months ago, though I know he still carries the pain of what happened. The extended family gatherings are now awkward affairs where people have to choose which events to attend based on whether Mom or Dad will be there. Most family members have sided with Dad, recognizing that he was the wrong party in all of this. Mom has become increasingly isolated, with only Melissa and a few longtime friends still maintaining close relationships with her. I've thought a lot about Melissa's choices and what they reveal about her character. I've concluded that she was always more superficial and materialistic than I wanted to believe. Gregory's wealth and status impressed her more than 30 years of Dad's steady presence and sacrifice. She chose the shiny new thing over the person who had actually been there for her entire life. The saddest part is watching Dad process the reality that his daughter chose status and money over loyalty to him. He's tried to rationalize it, saying that Melissa was young and impressionable, that Mom manipulated her, that the stress of wedding planning clouded her judgment. But I think he knows, as I do, that Melissa made her choices with full awareness of what she was doing. As for my own relationship with my sister, I don't see a path forward unless she fundamentally changes and takes accountability for her actions. She would need to apologize to Dad, acknowledge the pain she caused, and show through sustained actions that she understands why her behavior was wrong. Given her current attitude, I don't expect any of that to happen. I've learned painful lessons about family loyalty and about how people reveal their true character during times of crisis. Mom revealed that she valued excitement and status over commitment and integrity. Melissa revealed that she valued wealth and appearances over loyalty to the parent who had actually raised and supported her. And I learned that sometimes protecting yourself and your principles means walking away from family members who refuse to treat you with basic respect. Dad and I have grown closer through this experience. We talk regularly, have dinner together weekly, and he's become someone I can truly rely on. In a strange way, losing Mom and Melissa has strengthened my relationship with Dad and shown me who my real family is. The story isn't over. Melissa's baby will be born in a few months, and that will likely bring new complications. Mom continues to face the consequences of her choices, now single and estranged from much of her family. And Dad continues to heal and build a new life. But what I know for certain is that I made the right choice in supporting Dad and walking away from Melissa's wedding. Some bridges are worth burning when they're built on betrayal and cruelty. And some family members aren't worth keeping in your life when they've shown you exactly who they are. The situation took another turn about 2 weeks ago. Melissa went into early labor and delivered her baby at 36 weeks. The baby, a girl she named Charlotte, was healthy. Troy called to let me know, saying Melissa had been asking for me at the hospital. I debated whether to go. Emma encouraged me to at least meet my niece. Dad agreed, telling me he didn't want me to have regrets about missing important moments. I went to the hospital alone. When I walked into Melissa's room, she looked exhausted but genuinely happy to see me. She introduced me to Charlotte, who was tiny and perfect. For a moment, it felt like we might bridge the gap between us. But then Mom walked in. She had been in the cafeteria and was shocked to see me. She immediately started talking about how wonderful it was that the family was coming together for Charlotte, how babies healed rifts. I looked at Melissa, waiting to see how she would handle this. She said nothing, just looked between Mom and me nervously. Mom continued, saying Charlotte deserved to grow up with all her family, that we needed to put the past behind us. I told Mom that would require her to actually acknowledge what she had done. She bristled and said she wasn't going to relitigate old arguments in a hospital room. I said that meant there was nothing more to discuss. Melissa asked me to please not cause drama. I looked at my sister and realized nothing had changed. She still saw me as the problem, still refused to acknowledge Mom's actions had consequences. I congratulated Melissa on Charlotte's birth and left the hospital. As I drove home, I felt sad but clear about my choices. I would send gifts for Charlotte but wasn't going to subject myself to family gatherings where Mom's betrayal was swept under the rug. Dad appreciated hearing about Charlotte but agreed I had handled it correctly. He sent a generous gift for the baby but made no move to reach out to Melissa directly. The christening for Charlotte was scheduled for last month. I wasn't invited. What did surprise me was hearing that Mom had been asked to be the godmother. Melissa was apparently still elevating Mom's role despite everything. Meanwhile, Mom's life has continued to unravel. She was let go from her job at Gregory's company, likely because their relationship ending made working there awkward. She found another position but at a significant pay cut. I heard Mom tried to reach out to Dad again, asking if they could have coffee to discuss Charlotte. Dad declined, seeing it for what it was, Mom trying to use the grandchild as a way back into his life now that Gregory had discarded her. Dad has actually started a serious relationship with a woman named Patricia who he met through a friend. She's a widow, kind and understanding. I've met Patricia several times and she's lovely. When Melissa found out about Patricia through social media, she was upset. According to Troy, she felt betrayed that Dad was moving on. The irony was almost funny. She complained that Dad was replacing the family. This reaction revealed what I had suspected. Melissa wanted Dad to remain available despite how she had treated him. She wanted him to sit on the sidelines while she built her life. The fact that he was moving forward was apparently unacceptable. I've learned that you can't force people to value loyalty or recognize their wrongdoing. Mom will likely never fully understand the damage she caused. Melissa will probably never acknowledge her actions at the wedding were cruel. I've also learned that sometimes the loving thing is to maintain distance from people who hurt you repeatedly. I love my mother and sister in an abstract sense, but I don't like them very much right now. More importantly, I don't trust them. Dad has taught me about dignity and resilience. He focused on healing himself, being honest about what happened without being vindictive, and building a new life with integrity. Emma and I have gotten more serious as a result of going through this together. She was there for me during the worst of it. We've talked about marriage and about the kind of family we want to build, one based on honesty and loyalty. I ran into Gregory about a month ago at a networking event. He tried to make small talk, unaware of how much I despised him. I kept my responses cold and professional, then excused myself. The extended family has largely settled into a new normal where there are parallel family systems, events with Dad that most people attend, and events with Mom and Melissa that attract fewer people. I wonder sometimes if Melissa will ever have a moment of clarity where she understands what she did and why it was wrong. Maybe when Charlotte is older and asks why some family members aren't around, she'll be forced to reckon with her choices. What I know is that I don't regret my choices. I don't regret standing by Dad. I don't regret walking out of that rehearsal dinner. I don't regret skipping the wedding or maintaining my boundaries now. Some people might say that family is worth fighting for no matter what. But I've learned that not all family relationships are worth preserving, especially when they require you to compromise your integrity. Dad and I are family. My cousins who stood by us are family. Emma is family. Patricia is becoming family. Real family isn't just about blood relation, it's about people who show up for you, who treat you with respect. Mom and Melissa may be related to me, but they've shown through their actions that they don't value the same things I do. They've made their choices, and I've made mine. I can live with my choices. The photos from Melissa's wedding that circulated on social media tell an interesting story. Mom and Gregory are front and center, looking glamorous. But in candid shots, you can see the discomfort on guests' faces, the empty seat where Dad should have been. Those photos are a record of a day when my sister chose wrong. When she chose wealth and status over integrity and loyalty. When she chose to hurt our father in the most public way possible in exchange for Gregory's money and Mom's approval. Those photos will always tell that story, no matter how much Melissa tries to rewrite the narrative. I hope someday Melissa looks at those photos and feels shame for what she did. I hope she understands the price she paid for that perfect wedding and that shiny new relationship with Gregory who was gone within months. I hope she realizes that the family members who are missing from her daughter's life now are missing because of choices she made. But whether she ever reaches that understanding or not, I'm at peace with where things stand. I protected my father when he needed protection. I refused to participate in his public humiliation. I maintained my integrity even when it would have been easier to just go along with Melissa's version of events. And now I'm building my own life, my own family, based on the values that matter to me. Values that Mom and Melissa clearly don't share, but that Dad exemplifies every day. That's the family legacy I want to carry forward.